Another Queer Money follow-up covering episode number 47 of the Queer Money podcast. We're just going right through these.
Right.
It's
Almost
crazy.
through a year of them. What was interesting is this episode, we made a comment about how we had missed the week before.
Yeah, and I didn't know we missed an episode.
Well, I know that we had missed at least one week of sharing or recording the Queer Money podcast. And there was this week and maybe one other week that happened in the first year, a year and a half or so. But then since then, every single week we have recorded and shared a Queer Money podcast. So we're almost
helps that we're sponsored, so we kind of have an obligation to do it.
Right, exactly. Well, we made that commitment long before we got the sponsorship, right?
Yeah, for sure. So our question for you today is, how do you know truly if you're spending on the things that are important or unimportant?
Yeah.
That was on episode 47 of the Queer Money podcast. We talked about purpose-driven spending. And one of the things that we realized, and we were paying off our credit card debt, was that we had done a spending analysis of our finances when we realized we had $51,000 in credit card debt. And we were like, gosh, we're spending a lot of money in areas that kind of suggest that we're rock stars. But we didn't feel like rock stars. You know,
Right.
we would have said we had a decent life, but we wouldn't have said things were like crazy. But if you looked at our finances, especially the amount of money we were spending on going out to the clubs and dining out and alcohol, we were just spending an exorbitant amount of money. You just would have thought we were rock stars. And definitely we enjoy a good martini, and definitely we enjoy a good glass of wine, and definitely we enjoy going out with our friends. But we didn't feel like when we did that spending analysis that the cost was commensurate with the value that it was providing us. And so we kind of got into this train of thought of what is it that we really, really want.
Yeah.
And about that time we had been introduced to Dr. Dimartini. He's sort of a motivational life coach kind of person.
But he's a psychologist. He has years and years of clinical psychology work behind him. So he's not just some kind of internet rock star who just appeared and is telling everybody all of this
And
stuff.
he was around long before the internet.
Correct.
So we heard him on a podcast once where he said, fill your life with the important things, because if you don't, it'll automatically be filled with the unimportant things. And that's kind of paraphrasing it. But we kind of realized, like, wow, you know, while these things did provide us with a lot of enjoyment, they weren't really providing us with that much enjoyment. And so that was the motivation for this particular podcast, because it was getting crystal clear on not only what was most important to us, as we've shared before, that we wanted to give back to the LGBT community, that we want to travel as much as we possibly can, but do it on cash, and we want to save for a comfortable retirement. But there are some, brace yourself, we're not minimalists, we're not trying to tell you to not spend any money at all, but there are some tangible things that we would like to have in our life. For example, David has wanted his own very own brand new Audi A3 customized for him, and that's something that we'll do someday. But when we look at our finances, sometimes you would think that the Audi A3 isn't a goal, because we're spending so much money in another area of our life that we've never really listed as a top priority. For example, as many of you know, we just did a dry January, and this is kind of an anomaly, of course, but the amount of money we spent in December of 2020 relative to the amount of money we spent in January of 2021 on alcohol, clearly not doing a dry December, but doing a dry January, we probably saved what, like $300 or $400?
Yeah, I think between the alcohol that we purchase and bring home and the alcohol that we would purchase because of dining out, we were spending about $300 to $400 a month on alcohol. And mind you, we live in Las Vegas, so sitting outside at an outdoor restaurant and having a drink is pretty pricey. But what we found so interesting is it wasn't just the fact that we weren't drinking anything at home. We, because of not drinking, we
Right.
weren't actually going out to eat as well. So there was kind of this residual effect of not spending money on food as a dining out costs as well. Or at least I think what really was happening is we were choosing restaurants that don't serve or generally don't serve alcohol anyway.
Exactly. So, so what is it we really want? Do we want the Audi A3? Do we want the 3 French Bulldogs? Yes, we do. Do we want the modern home in Palm Springs or Vegas or Denver? Yes, we do. But sometimes when we look at our spending, it suggests otherwise.
Right.
And so the point of this of purpose-driven spending is getting crystal clear on what matters most to you. And like Dr. Dimartini said, know what matters most to you and focus on what matters most to you. Because if you don't, it's going to all of a sudden get filled up with a bunch of other stuff that doesn't matter to you. And, I think in this particular episode, we talked about how that's even harder to do today than maybe in the past.
Right.
Because of, even if you think about the 80s, of course, there was a lot of advertising going on. Magazines were at like their zenith. 24-hour television was becoming a thing, so 24-hour advertising was becoming a thing. But even then, you weren't being bombarded with as much advertising as we are today with our constantly being connected. There are 3 monitors in front of us right now, and if we didn't have our devices up so we could stream this episode, there could be advertisements just everywhere bombarding us.
Right. Well, just think about it. Let's say in the past you sat down and you watched an hour-long television show on network regular television, right? So you're sitting there for an hour. The reality is that program is about 47 minutes long. Right? You're watching an hour program. So that means there's roughly about 13 minutes of advertisements or other material that's being presented. Sometimes it's ads, sometimes it's ads for the news station, or maybe there's some public service announcements or things like that. But the reality is you probably saw anywhere from about 10 to 20 ads during that time period. Today, if you were to sit on your phone and scroll through Instagram,
Jeez, you can do that
for
in
an
5 minutes.
hour, you're going to see hundreds of ads, literally hundreds of ads.
Is there a study, I wonder?
I'm sure there
the amount of
is. We
ads
just haven't
people
looked
are-
at that kind of data. But
We'll have to look into that. I'm curious because, yeah, you're right. Because just on Instagram alone,
right,
it's like to me, that's all Instagram is really an advertising platform. It's like
Well,
a
and
magazine version
we
of social media.
we have on our website, we have specifically not put ads on there, partly because when we were first investigating whether or not to do ads as a way to generate revenue from our website, because websites are they cost money, right? So we have to, and this is a business, right? This is not a charity. We do this as a business, so we have to make money. And we started investigating whether or not to do ads, and we found here we are trying to encourage folks to cut their expenses or to
Spend on the important things.
spend on the important things and pay off their debt. But we were seeing advertisements for Amazon's hot product, or you would see if you use Google Ads, it's going to pop up whatever ads for whatever website you were at previously. So we were constantly seeing that.
It seemed hypocritical.
Yeah, it seemed very hypocritical that we were making money off of you not spending well, but we were at the same time encouraging you to spend well, right?
So if you're not crystal clear on what's most important to you and actively engaged in focusing on only spending your money on what's most important to you, then you kind of open yourself up to the risk of all this advertisement having you spend on things that aren't necessarily providing any value to your life. And then add on top of that the layer that we've talked about here before, specifically for gay men who we are, is we have a lot of pain that we're masking, and oftentimes we use spending of all sorts and varieties as a way to mask that pain.
Right.
And it was very interesting on this particular episode 47, of the Queer Money podcast. Just prior to that episode, David did an unscientific poll in a very large Facebook group targeted to gay men. I think at the time there was about 47, maybe 50,000 individuals in there, predominantly gay men. And the question, I forget exactly what the question was, but the question was around, why do you spend the way you do in certain areas? And the resounding response was that it just makes me feel better. And whatever that reason is came from have a past that hurts me, or I'm living in a present that hurts me, and for whatever reason, these gay men were saying that I overspend to help just make myself feel better.
Right. I think when we're talking about this idea of overspending or spending on the important stuff, it's easy to use the visualization of the rocks, pebbles, sand, and water in a jar, right? And if you're not familiar with this, I think most of you are, but if you're not familiar with this, there is only one way to get everything into the jar. And that's where you start with the big rocks first. Then you put in the pebbles, then you put in the sand, then you put in the water, right? If you fill the jar full of water, and then you try to put anything else in, the water's going to overflow, right? If you fill it full of sand, there will never be enough room to be able to put in the other items. So if you start with the big important things, then you have the ability to put everything in, right? And so I think that it's very easy in the world we live in today. We are constantly getting bombarded with information, not just advertisements, but from our social circles, right? Our parents are telling us that they want grandkids. Our friends are telling us that we should have. I mean, it was kind of interesting when we moved into our condo. It was kind of a shock that so many of our friends were encouraging us, or surprised that we had such a small condo. We bought a 1,000 square foot condo because it was the perfect size for us. Two of us, we didn't need any more space, but it was kind of surprising.
I never let him get too far away from me.
Right. There was discussion that we had with some of our friends who were like, we don't understand why you guys didn't buy something bigger, because it's going to appreciate more and you're going to make more money on the appreciation. And we're like, well, we don't want a big house. We don't want to have to clean it, right? Well, right. We didn't want to be a house poor. So I guess this is the thing: is what do we really spend on? Are we spending on the important stuff, or are we spending on the important right now? What is important to you right now?
Yeah, and David shared a quote that on this episode of the Career Money podcast that we love, and he's used several times before, but if you can't enjoy the big things in life, definitely enjoy the small things. But if you enjoy the small things too much, you'll never, ever be able to enjoy the big things.
Well, and I think the focus here is on what you can afford, right? If you can't afford to enjoy the big things in life, then you need to get enjoyment in life, right? You can't just go without enjoyment. So enjoy some of the small things. But the reality is if we enjoy the small things over and over and over and over again, we will never be able to enjoy the big things. And here's a good example. I know everybody picks on lattes, right? The coffee latte factor from David Bach. So if you go and you buy a $6 latte every single day, well, that's going to cost you over $2,000 a year, right? Well, there's nothing wrong with enjoying a latte. We love going to the coffee shop and enjoying a latte. So you may be going to latte every single day, and then you're jealous of your friends who are posting on Instagram or Facebook, or you have a conversation with them about how they just took a vacation or they took a 3-day weekend. And so if you're spending $2,000 a year on lattes, why not cut that in half and save up the $1,000 so that you can take that trip, right? And that is, I think that's the thing here is, what is important to you? What are you filling your jar full? If you say something is important to you, and we had a very interesting conversation with Coach Fletch is what he used to go by. I can't remember what
I think he still goes by Coach Fletch.
Well, he has a new brand.
And I think he still goes by himself, Coach Fletch.
Right, and we had an interesting conversation with him the other day about this whole idea of what you value, and do your standards show? Does your standard show that what it is you truly value? So you may say, here's a perfect example. You may say that you value fitness and health, but your standard is allowing you to sit in front of the TV for 6 hours a night with a bag of M&Ms and take out from the fast food on the way home. And so your standard is, I don't want to put in the effort, or I don't want to put in the work, or I'm too tired, I'm too whatever.
Well, and the crux of that particular discussion with Coach Fletch was that lots of people sort of assume values that everybody else assumes, right? Everybody else has the value of good health. Everybody else has the value of fiscal responsibility. Everybody else has the value of altruism. But is that actually authentically what we each value? It's similar. It's very very specific to his point. Every company has a mission statement or a vision and value statement, but they're all the same. They all put their customers first. Right. They all love their employees. They all want to have a free and open environment. Right. But do they all actually have that, or is it just a platitude that's put up on a wall?
Right.
So similarly to your values, do you actually value fitness? Do you actually value fiscal responsibility? Or are you just assuming the values that have been imprinted on you since before the day you were born, similar to what we discussed with the 4 agreements? Are these actual values of yours, or were they just imprints?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So thank you for joining us for another Queer Money podcast follow-up. Here is your takeaway for this particular episode. Please sign up for the 5 building blocks of a happy gay life at debtfreeguys.com/happy. Then let us know in the comments section below how you know whether or not you're spending on the important things or the unimportant things. And hopefully you saw from this particular episode that you know that you're spending on the important things. If you're spending on the things that are actually providing value to your life, that fuel your soul, that you keep continuing to pine for, and not for the things that are just providing temporary satisfaction. Then tomorrow, join us for a Queer Money Podcast episode number 48, where we cover, this is very interesting to me. I've noticed this now that we're doing these Queer Money follow-ups every single day for episodes of the Queer Money Podcast that we do on a weekly basis. There seems to be episodes seem to come in like a stream of consciousness.
Yes.
So today's episode very much relates to what we're going to discuss tomorrow on how to get what you really want. Yeah. And then, so you can see exactly what the parallels are there. Then, as always, please give a thumbs up on this video. Please subscribe to this channel, and please set notifications on this channel so you can join in on the discussion. We would love to have this be a dialogue and not a presentation. Thank you, and we'll see you